Theory students, this week we have one thinker, John Locke, and I'm going to direct my comments towards John Locke's Treatise on Government, because I think that's the more important piece here. John Locke, when we read John Locke, is very inoffensive to us, because John Locke is very familiar to us in the sense that John Locke believes in some things that are fundamental to the experience and development of the United States. John Locke believes in natural rights, he believes in democracy, and he believes in popular sovereignty, right, the rule of the people. And so John Locke, when we read him, it's awfully boring because there's not much that's controversial in John Locke. Although when you read his stuff on tolerance and religion, you might find some things that are controversial, like but again, I'm going to sort of keep my remarks here to the treatise on government. So John Locke, he writes two treatises on government. The second one's the more important one. But either way, in both treatises, what John Locke is attempting to do is to determine what constitutes legitimate rule. Right? What constitutes legitimate government? And so that's where John Locke starts. It's in like paragraph 4 of the second treatise. He says, "Political power, then, I take it, to be a right of making laws with penalties of death, and consequently all less penalties, for regulating and preserving property, and of employing the force of the community, and the execution of such laws, and in the defense of the Commonwealth from foreign injury, and all this only for the public good." Right? So legitimate political power is political power that creates laws, creates punishment for violating those laws, enforces those punishments and consequences. It preserves property. It protects people from injury, and it operates in the public good. Right? That constitutes legitimate government. And he flat out says that monarchy is illegitimate government. Right? So he's attempting to argue against absolute monarchy. So contra Hobbes, right? Whereas Hobbes likes absolute monarchy, a single sole ruler, single sole despot. John Locke disagrees with that, because what you end up with is arbitrary government. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid arbitrary government. Arbitrary government where one single person has the ability to decide right and wrong and the consequences. Right? There's no stability. There's no uniformity. There's no consistency. There's no rule of law that all people are treated equally. And so that can't be legitimate government, because it doesn't do the things that Locke says constitute legitimate government. And so then how do we decide what a legitimate government looks like? John Locke says, just like Thomas Hobbes says, we have to go back to the state of nature. And so for Locke, the state of nature looks very different from the state of nature of Hobbes. Right? So for Hobbes, the state of nature is all about the individual. For Locke, the state of nature is communal. For Hobbes, the state of nature is a state of violence, a state of perpetual war and conflict. For Locke, the state of nature is cooperative. For both, though, right, you are obliged to preserve your own life. But what that preservation of life ends up looking like is why we have two different conceptions of what the state of nature is. Right? For Hobbes, in order to preserve your own life, it's you against everybody else. It's violent. You have to constantly be fighting with everyone. For Locke, the preservation of life involves cooperation. That people will cooperate because that is what is in their best interest. That is what's most likely to preserve your life. For Hobbes, the state of nature is a perpetual state of war. For Locke, says it's not. Right? There's a difference between being in war and conflict with someone and living in the state of nature. Right? Hobbes fundamentally rejects that conception. For Locke, state of nature just means you're without a common government. Right? And we can live cooperatively without a common government, Locke says. But then the question is, why would we ever need government? Right? If we can work cooperatively and live cooperatively, in a communal setting, why do we need government? And Locke says, well, eventually we begin to formulate private property, right? So it's not the problem at the beginning. Locke says, I go to a tree and I pick an apple and I get eaten that apple. That apple is my property. I go and I start planting some corn in the ground and that corn is mine. And people are like, yeah, that's cool, whatever. I can go farm my own land and go pick my own apples. It's no problem. The problem is when we get into scarcity, right? When there's not enough land to go around or there's not enough food to go around. Then we end up with conflict. People need to be able to satisfy their individual needs. And at the beginning, there's enough to go around for everybody. But as society progresses and we get larger, we can't, right? There's no land of plenty anymore. And it simply becomes an untenable situation. We end up with then the creation of money because there's not enough to go around. So I don't have enough chickens anymore to exchange for your pig. So instead, I found some shiny pieces of metal on the ground and I give them to you. And then we have money. And money becomes problematic because money can't spoil. And so for Locke, one of the things about property is you're only supposed to take what you can use. Right? So for Locke, private property exists and you can create private property, but he has what's known as the spoilage rule. You can't take more than you can consume or more than you can use. You can't spoil anything. So I can't have a whole grove of apple trees just for myself and refuse to let anyone pick them because they'll spoil. And spoilage is not acceptable because I'm denying people what they need. Money doesn't spoil. So people can hoard money. And when people begin hoarding money, that's when we get vast inequalities of rich and poor. And at that point, we need government to step in because then we have violence between rich and poor. Poor try to take rich people's property. Things aren't secure. So we need government. Okay? And so then, if we're going to create government, what does that government look like? Because we need a government, Locke says, right? It's the proper remedy for all the negative things that happen in the state of nature. And he says that people will create what's known as the social contract. Hobbes also has a social contract. The social contract in Hobbes is different than the social contract in Locke. So in Hobbes, right, we, the people, create a contract with a sovereign authority for their protection. We contract with the Leviathan, with the ruler, with the sovereign. For Locke, we contract with each other. We, all the citizens, come together and form an agreement that we will give up our right to execute laws in the state of nature, right? So, in the state of nature, if you trespass on my property, I shoot you. I execute the laws. There's no police. There's no government. We agree to give up that right to police in the state of nature to a common authority. Common authority is created out of that contract, right? So we contract with each other to create a government. The government is not party to the contract. The government is the outcome of the social contract, which means, according to John Locke, that the citizens, the people, are always the ultimate authority, right? Popular sovereignty, popular will of the people, right? In the United States Constitution, it says, we the people, right? For John Locke, same thing. We the people create a government. And the government serves three purposes. It serves to protect our lives, it serves to protect our liberty, and it serves to protect our property. Okay, three things, right? We need to protect our lives, right? We want to be, free from arbitrary violent death. We don't need people running around killing us. Our liberties, right? Locke believes as people, we are born with natural rights. We inherently have the right to life, the right to protect ourselves, the right to accumulate property, the right to practice our religions, as he says in the letter to toleration, right, toleration of religions. And we have other inalienable rights just for the purpose of existing as a person in the world. And that God gives us those rights. Right? Government doesn't give us those rights. Those rights come from God. Right? The right of equality, all people being equal, because God made all people equal, Locke says. Right? That's a natural right. And also is property. Right? You need to be able to acquire property, and government must protect that property, because if your property cannot be secure, none of those other things can be secure, Locke says. Right? If someone will rob you, Locke says, this is the example. If you're riding on your horse, through the woods, like Sherwood Forest, and then, a band of bandits comes upon you and says, give me your cloak, give me your horse. How do I know that they're going to stop at my cloak and my horse? I don't, right? They might kill me. So if your property can't be secure, your life is probably not going to be secure. Right? If people can steal and pillage, if we can't protect you from that, odds are people that steal are also potentially going to murder you. Not good. Okay? And our liberty, right? If I don't have material wealth, I cannot exercise many of the liberties that are afforded to me. And this is an ongoing process that even in the United States, some people have more free speech than others because of their material wealth, right? Some people have more ability to petition their government because of their means. Some people have more ability to exercise their rights because of their means. Locke says, those means, right? The money, property is fundamental to liberty. And so all of these things are intertwined, right? My liberties aren't secure if my life isn't secure. My life isn't secure if my liberties aren't secure, right? My liberties aren't secure if my property is not secure, okay? All these things are intertwined, and you possess all of them. You possess them. They're yours, right? And so they have to be free from threat of danger. And that's the job of government, to ensure that you as a person, you as a property holder, and you as someone with liberties, rights, and freedoms are secure, right? That is the purpose of government. And it's got to be a democracy, right? Because a democracy is the only form of government without arbitrary rule, Locke says, right? Under monarchies, none of those three things are secure, because the monarch at any time can decide to strip you of one of them, right? The monarch can strip you of your property, the monarch can strip you of your rights, the monarch can strip you of your life, right? So again, contra Hobbes, right? Locke believes that the people are always sovereign, right? Even though we, the people, create a government, and then we charge that government with certain things, and we create a democracy out of it. In the end, the people always retain the right to determine whether or not that government is operating in their interest. We retain the right of rebellion, of revolution, the ability to overthrow that government. Right? So Locke says, the people create the government, and so the people can disassemble that government. Right? If we don't like government, if it's not fulfilling the ends that we decide it should fulfill, we dissolve it. And we create a new government, because the contract is between the people. All right. And so if we agree to create a government, and then the government does the thing, then we all agree this government sucks. We got to get rid of it. We can do that because we are the possessors of the contract. Right. We decide what the contract entails. Okay? And so for Locke, this is really fundamentally important, and this is fundamentally important for our American revolutionaries and revolutionaries around the world who get the idea that governments rest upon popular sovereignty, they rest upon the will of the people, and that people create government. So again, we go back to the ancients, government is natural. Locke, government is not natural. It's a man-made construction. And if it's a man-made construction, we can create it, alter it, or abolish it. Okay? It's revolutionary for Locke's time to have a theory of revolution. It's simple to us now because, American history tells us that. But that's what happens, right? We operate within the social contract. Government protects us, our rights and our freedoms. And if it doesn't, we have the right to abolish it. Okay? So that's a quick little snapshot of John Locke's second treatise of government.